Alexander C. Bennett has 2 PhDs in Human Studies and Sciences from the University of Canterbury and Kyoto University. He holds the ranks of 7th Dan Kyoshi in Kendo, 5th Dan in Iaido and Naginata, 3rd Dan in Jukendo and Tankendo. He is professor at Kansai University of both Kendo and Japanese culture and history, vice president of the International Naginata Federation, member of the International Committee of the All Japan Kendo Federation, director at the Japanese Academy of Budo, co-founder of the Kendo World Magazine, and author of several books in English and Japanese. Season 1, Episode 10, Budo, a Modern Concept of Education.
Budo itself is a word. It didn't really come to mean what we look at now as the modern Budo disciplines like Judo and Kendo and Karate, Aikido and so on, until really when was it? Was it 1919? I'm not sure if it's 1919 or 1917, I have to check that, but when there was a guy called Nishikubo Hiromichi, and he was actually the mayor of Tokyo, but he was also a famous kendo man. And he was the principal, the headmaster of the Dai Nippon Butokukai, which was an organization, I know this is getting complicated, created in 1895 to preserve martial arts and promote them because they're so disparate and they were just disappearing because there was no need for them anymore. There was no practical application for a kusarigama or a yari or a katana when you're in the theatre of modern battle, right? So martial arts sort of lost their significance or their relevance, and they were dying out, and the Dai Nippon Butokukai was created in 1895 in Kyoto, and it sought to say, hey, this is really important culture, guys, we've got to look after this, we've got to keep this, and it became a massive organization. Like in the space of 10 years it had over 1 million members, because it became a club that you pay a little bit of money, you get a badge, and you can be associated with the Dai Nippon Butokukai, which was they were very smart the way they did it. They had very important people like governors as the branch sort of presidents, if you like, and the custodians. And so it sort of became quite a trendy club to be part of. And also coincided with a rise in Japanese nationalism as it started to try and expand its colonial interests. And so it all fitted in nicely together as Japan was creating a new modern identity in the and the Dai Nippon Butokukai sort of became the umbrella organization for the martial arts. Anyway, Nishikubo Hiromichi, he was part of that, and he was also the principal of the school called used to be called the Bujutsu Senmon Gakko. Senmon Gakko is vocational school. Okay, so a vocational school for learning the martial arts that was run by the Dai Nippon Butokukai, this organization. And why did they have this school? So that people could go and study Kenjutsu and Naginata Jutsu and Jujutsu and in a standardized form, so that when they graduated from the school, they could go into the nation's schools and teach martial arts. And this became allowed in Japan to teach the martial arts in Japanese schools from 1911. Okay, but it only actually really eventuated from 1913. So it's just over 100 years ago. So it took, when you think about it, Kano Jigoro, he started his campaign in 1882. Okay, so it's almost 30 years, finally. It was accepted after much lobbying. But, so the Dai Nippon Butokukai school was very important. And, okay, if you're allowed to teach martial arts in schools, who's going to teach it? And so they needed qualified teachers to do that. And so the Butokukai was one of the schools. The other one was the Tokyo Higher Normal School, which Kano Jigoro was actually the president of, which is now Tsukuba University. But in any case, sorry, I'm digressing a lot. Nishikubo Hiromichi in pretty sure it's 1919, If I'm wrong, could you put a subtitle under that? Actually, Alex got it wrong. It was 1917. It's one of the two. He said, we're not going to call this school the Bujutsu Senmon Gakko anymore. We're going to call it the Budo Senmon Gakko. Because Bujutsu seems to have a kind of the nuance of combat and just the techniques. But what we're trying to propagate here is far more profound than that. It's a way of life. It's education. And so from now on, we're going to call Kenjutsu Kendo. We're going to call Kyujutsu Kyudo. Everything's going to end with a do. Now even karate later on was called karate do. Everything, it's sumo do. Can you believe that? They don't call it sumo do anymore, but it used to be called sumo do. Naginata do, which you never hear anymore. But this was this was really the next step in modern Budo's evolution. And there's a little bit of controversy about this, but I really think that the evidence points to the idea that Nishikubo pretty much copied this off Kano Jigoro. Okay, and the Ministry of Education, remember that Dai Nippon Butokukai was not a government organisation, it was a private organisation that set itself up as the gatekeeper of martial arts in Japan to protect it. But the Ministry of Education, after having agreed to let martial arts be taught in schools, it wasn't until the 1920s, I think it was 1926, that they officially changed all of the terms to Budo in their documents. So the idea of Budo itself officially is not even 100 years old. And another thing that is often overlooked, it has its roots in traditional jujutsu or kenjutsu, and then it became judo and then kendo and so on and so forth. But it was also greatly influenced by Western educational ideals. I mentioned Spencer before, for example. Because the Japanese education system was remodeled, if you like. The modern system was modeled on the Western style of education. And so the way in which sports were conducted, the way in which physical education, the objectives, and so forth, were, I wouldn't say they're a direct importation from the West, but they were very much influenced by Western ideas. So we look at traditional Japanese Budo, sure, if you deconstruct a history and you go back in time, you can see the connection all the way back to the days of the samurai. But the modern ideals are not exactly purely Japanese at all.
In the next and last episode, Alex will share his thoughts on today's Budo education, from how little his students know about Japanese history to what Budo can play in one's life today.
I'm involved with Japanese students, University Kendo Club. But how accurately do they see Budo? Not very. Very few, if any of them, would have heard of the Dai Nippon Butokukai. Very few, if any of them, would know that Kendo and Judo and Budo was banned after World War II. None of them would know about Sakakibara Kenkichi, but it's also been adapted, changed, modernized, in some ways westernized. If Kano Jigoro was worried about tradition, he wouldn't have created Kodokan Judo.
Stay tuned for the next and last episode of the first season.